Hey guys, we're here. I'm here with Travis, and we're going to talk about, in this social distancing world, about getting out to your community ponds and what you can do to be successful with that. So, Travis, you got some pretty cool ways, a little bit, pretty simple stuff.
Simple stuff.
that we
Simple
can get out
stuff,
there.
good techniques, really inexpensive stuff to catch any species from your trout. The community ponds will hit the trout, will hit the bluegill, the perch, anything we got in there. We've got some really basic setups that are going to work really good for you, I think, today. So
Where are we starting?
we're going to start right here with I call it the worm below the bubble setup. It'll take a worm, it'll take a mealworm. Those are two of the best that I've worked out with so far that work the best. So what we do is here's our rod and reel right here. We're going to sort of pretend that this is the rod and reel right here. We've got this big green bubble for good visibility. What you're going to do is you're going to pop it open and you're going to fill it about a quarter to a half full of water. I'd say more than a quarter than a half. Half makes it a little too heavy. Do it back up. You've got a big end on the bubble and a small end on the bubble. You're going to go the small end up towards your rod. With this bubble, line it up here. And then on the line that comes through off your rod, you're going to tie onto the big end of this swivel. The Fisherman's Knot is a very simple knot. You go through the swivel. If you're right-handed like I am, you're going to take your left hand, your pointer finger and your thumb, and hold it right there to keep a loop and keep an open loop in the line. Then you just wind the line around itself. I would go about 6 to 8 times, depending on how thick the line is. And you go back through that loop that you made. Hold it with your thumb and forefinger and just pull that knot tight. That's a knot I use on everything, even my flies and stuff like that. So you just clip off the excess. I never like to leave excess line and stuff like that. There's 2 reasons I say go onto the big end of the swivel and the bubble up towards your rod. If the bubble's turned away from the small end and it gets jarred on here with your cast, it's going to pop it open. Water's going to come out.
You're going to lose all your water.
Lose all your water. And you don't want to spend every cast filling up with water each time. That's no fun. So just make sure the small end's up, and then when this gets jarred against the big end of this swivel right here, it's just going to seal it up even tighter so the water won't come out.
So you're not putting a bobber stop or anything on
No
it. You're
bobber
just
stop.
running it. Okay.
We want it to free flow, and I'll tell you why here in a minute. We're going to want this to free flow. So remember, we're just going small end up towards your rod onto the big end of the swivel. Second reason we go on the big end of the swivel is we don't want it to get stuck in the bubble. Chris just mentioned we're not using a bobber stop or anything like that. This is going to free flow up and down the line, and we'll get to that in just a second. On the opposite end, the small end of the swivel, the barrel end, we're going to go about 4 feet, 4 to 5 feet of this leader material. Try to go a leader material a little bit smaller than what's coming off your pole. So if you've got 8-pound line off your pole, go a 6-pound leader. 6-pound off your pole, go a 4-pound leader, and so forth and so on.
And from the leader, it goes to your hook.
Goes to my hook, yeah.
So there's a couple choices in hooks.
Yeah, we got 3 different choices in hooks. I use a number 4 hook for my half a night crawler, and I'm going to stress half a night crawler here in a minute. I use a number 8 hook for the mealworm, and we'll get to that here in a second also. And then this is going to be more for a bottom setup, which I'm going to set aside because I want to go through the top setups quick. But this is our power bait hook that also is going to work good on these ponds for you. So off the 4 feet, off the opposite end of the 4 feet of the leader that we went on the swivel, we're going to go a number 4 hook for a night crawler. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the night crawler and break it right in half. I'll just do a quick little illustration here. A lot of guys will take a bigger hook, like a size 2 or a size 1 bait holder hook, and they'll hook the night crawler and they'll wrap it, and they'll hook it and they'll wrap it. That's not a good idea because it leaves too much of the hook exposed, and it leaves way too much night crawler on each side of the hook for the fish to feed on before they actually hook up. So I take a night crawler and break it directly in half, use the hole you made in the night crawler, and just thread it right up on the hook. So now the whole shaft of the hook's covered. You can take the barb and pop it out of the end of the night crawler, and it'll actually go back in towards his body so it stays pretty much invisible. And there's still going to be plenty of night crawler dangling off of there to attract the fish and get a quick hookup. So what you do on the community ponds, and not just the community ponds, but
This could be reservoirs
still
too,
water,
right?
still water reservoirs, lakes, stuff like that. Even deeper pools and slow-moving rivers, this works pretty good.
It's like Bear River,
Bear
all
River,
those
stuff like
bends
that, yeah.
have stuff.
So you're going to cast this out into the pond. Your trout species are going to be more open water species. So after the trout specifically, go into more open water. Stay closer to cover if you want to get your warm water species. But cast this out and let it sit. I wouldn't let it sit for more than 5 minutes. We're going to plan on some really good fishing here. So after 5 minutes, what's happening is the weight of the swivel, the leader, the hook, and the bait, whatever bait you've chosen, is slowly moving away from this bubble. Now it's becoming a suspending bait. It's putting itself in front of more fish. So you've got a better chance for more fish to see it and hook up more often.
And when they go to take it too, they're not feeling the weight of that bubble pulling
Exactly.
down, right?
That's the main reason we've got this free flowing, is they're going to take some fish. It probably doesn't matter, but fish that have been around a little bit and been hooked up on a little bit, when they take the bait and start running, if you've got a bubble that's directly connected to the line or bubble stopped right here, they're going to feel the weight of that and they're going to let go of the bait before they're hooked. So we like it to free flow. So cast it out and let it sit. And like I say, this stuff will move away from the bubble. After about 5 minutes, you're watching this bubble for your strike. Anything that it does different, if it goes underwater or moves different away from the wind and stuff like that, you're getting bit. Let it sit for about 5 minutes. If you don't pick up a fish, I would just reel it in until the swivel comes taut with the bubble. You won't be able to see it, of course, because it's out in the water.
You'll feel
but
it.
You'll know it and you'll feel it because the bubble will start towards you. Move it about 2 feet and repeat. Let it sit again for another 5 minutes. If you haven't caught a fish by the time you get too close to the shore, you feel you're uncomfortably too close to the shore, just recast and start over. And that's a real basic, effective setup. Like I say, you're going to go a smaller hook. We've got the smaller hook here for a mealworm. You can legally fish 2 poles in Utah. So I would have a setup out with maybe a worm on it, a setup with a mealworm. And the way you bait the mealworms is they've got a little tail on them, and then they've got a head, and then they've got little plates in the back of their neck. And you can take the little hook and go right in the back of their neck, right where the plate is in the back of their neck, and just thread them up on so the whole body's covering the shaft of the hook, like we did with the night crawler.
It makes it a little more natural.
It makes it a little more natural looking. Yeah, they'll still wiggle their little tail and stuff like that. So you can cast it out, and like I say, very effective, very inexpensive. Gone into a little bit of detail. We get a lot more detail if you come into Smith & Edwards and talk to one of us. We got a bunch of the guys that know this setup, so it'll be a really good setup as far as just bait fishing.
So now the next setup, you can actually use the same hooks if you want to.
Yeah.
And go power bait.
Power bait.
Right.
Okay, power bait floats. We got to remember power bait floats. So what we're going to do is we're going to fish the power bait off the bottom. So all we're doing is we're replacing, pretty easy, since it's the exact same setup, except for you're replacing the bubble with an egg sinker.
So you're going from floating in the water column to starting at the bottom.
Starting at the bottom. And again, like I say, these sinkers, I'll pop them open. We can do that.
Break it, you buy it, Travis.
Break it, we buy it. I'll be buying these sinkers. I use them all the time, so that's okay. Just to give you a visual. Okay, so all we're doing now is we're taking the sinker, and of course, the sinker's
egg
going
sinkers,
egg
right?
sinkers, yeah, and it's just taking the spot of the bubble. So we're threading it through your line off your pole, and again, we're going to the big side of that swivel. If I can get that in there. We're going to the big side of that swivel again because we don't want it to get caught up with the weight, and we want the weight to free flow. It's the same concept. But what you want to do for sure off the bottom is shorten your leader. The top, remember, about 4 feet of leader. The bottom, shorten up to about 1.5 feet or 2 feet of leader. Because that power bait's going to be on that hook, and it's just going to be sitting up here floating like this with the sinker down on the bottom.
And that swivel will hit the bottom
That
too.
swivel will hit the bottom too, yeah. And then when the fish hits, it's going to run just like it did on the bubble. It's going to run without the fish feeling any extra weight, so the fish will go ahead and try to swallow and digest the bait and get hooked up a lot better for you.
A lot of those community ponds have catfish in them. This is a great catfish. fish.
And you can put the night crawler on the bottom. I would recommend putting the mealworms on the bottom. They don't last very much long on the bottom. But you can put a night crawler on the bottom with your size 4 hook. The power bait, we've got the 2 different hooks. We've got the dough bait hook. We've got the little size 8 hook. The power bait will work on both of them.
Now you're gonna want power bait to be on a little smaller hook because you want it to float. If you get that hook too big,
it's gonna sink.
The hook will sink it.
And there's 2 things you need to do well, you can test that, and it's actually necessary to test it. You're gonna get the power bait in a little ball. If you got the dough bait hook, it's gonna stick on there a little bit easier, but you can actually just use a plain, regular bait hook. You just cover up the whole hook. And once the whole hook's covered, you wanna get it wet before you cast it. So just take the end of your pole and hang it out over the lake or the community pond, wherever you're at, and set that power bait in there and see that it's got enough power bait on there to float that hook. First of all, like Chris said, you don't want it sinking down by the bottom. And then you get it wet because it holds up like a paste. If you cast it without it getting wet, you're probably gonna lose it.
It's like casting Play-Doh.
Casting Play-Doh. Once it's wet and set up, it stays in there pretty good. So that's another Like I said, you can either do your 2 pulls on top with different baits. You can put one on the bottom. I usually put one on the bottom with power bait. Put one on the top with a worm or a mealworm, whichever one starts hitting better is the one I'll go to. So that's the basic bait setups that are going to work in these community ponds and lakes and reservoirs very, very well this time of year. And then we've got
there's some guys. There's some guys that don't really love to bait fish.
Don't love to bait fish.
They want to be able to walk and move and cast a lot more and be a little more active.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong, in my opinion, with a Jake spin lure. I don't know about you, Travis.
I love them.
I love the Jakes. Gold, silver tend to be your top ones. Branch out. Don't be scared to branch out and maybe some different colors if you want to feel like. If you feel like the pond gets fished a lot with Jakes, try some different colors. They have some different colors that you can use that might help you out.
Then the spinners. There's lots and lots of different spinners and spoons, folks. I mean, you can use, like I said, come in and see us. We can set you up on all our favorite colors, all our favorite sizes. Most of the spinners nowadays come with an inline swivel on it, so you don't have to use a swivel. You just tie straight to it, and all you're doing with the spinners and the spoons is you're casting them out and steady retrieving them. You can either go slow for a lower depth to get deeper in the water, or a little bit faster to keep it up high. Once you find the fish, you can just vary your depth as far as how long you let it sit and how slow you cast, how slow you reel in. Slow or fast you reel in.
Now, I know the one time we were over, like it was about a month ago, over at the Smith Pond, just across the street from the Ogden store. I was letting it sink for a little bit close to the bottom and then reeling real slow. And it was a kind of a windy, cool day, and the fish were tugging closer to the bottom.
Yeah.
And letting that sink was all the difference in catching fish. And
It is. It makes it. Yeah, if you're not getting with these basic setups, I'm not going to say they're foolproof as far as catching fish, but if you're not getting bit or hit with these setups, try different depths. Try different, like I said, from the bottom to the top. You should be catching fish on these setups. Come in and talk to us. Let us teach you a little bit more about them and so forth and so on. But you should be catching fish with these. That's why we're doing these videos. We want everybody out there to be successful on the water. So,
fun.
Yes.
Oh, it's great to be outside.
Oh, this time of year, especially with all the stuff that's going on, being outside fishing and relaxing is just a great place to be. So, one more thing I'm going to back up really quick with the little Jakes. We talked about the inline swivels on the spinners. You're going to need a swivel with the Jakes because they don't have a swivel on them. And if you tie straight onto the line and get a pretty heavy fish or something that tugs it pretty good, it's going to go ahead and rub against that metal and break your line.
The other part to that is it's a barrel swivel. If you put the barrel swivel on, as that Jake's spinning and moving, if you just tie directly to it, it's going to twist that line up, and that's how you get knots in your reel and all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
So having that barrel swivel is a really good thing.
So remember, with most standard spoons and Jake type lures, you're going to use a swivel. Most standard spinners, it's not necessary. So yeah, between those setups with the weights and the bubbles and the different baits we've talked about, get out there, hit the water, and if you have any more questions, come in and see us.
And come in and see us and tell us about your success.
That's what I love to hear. We love to. I've had some guys that I've sent across to the community pond and showed them these setups, and they've came back and actually asked me to not share it with anybody. And we're obviously
now we're putting it on YouTube,
sharing it with everybody,
Facebook and Instagram.
So yeah, hope to see you out there on the water.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, Chris.